Hey, well, I'm excited to be on with Charlie Vogelheim, who just came back from Vegas to his second favorite conference, CES, and he's going to fill us in on some stuff that he saw that was really relevant for our fleet community. So, Charlie, for those that don't know you, most people do actually, but why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, Chris, I'm excited to be here. Yeah, I was in Vegas at CES for Sunday through Thursday, but I'm got a background in the auto industry, was Kelly Blue Book for decades, worked for JD Power and Associates, done a lot of work recently on the media side, had a podcast for Motor Trend, had a radio show here in San Francisco, I've done stuff for Car and Driver, and just paying attention to all of the changes, particularly this transformation to transformation that seems to come out of Silicon Valley that we're talking about now,
Yeah.
and the initials and word AI as it got associated with everything last year. It's been interesting to go to CES this year, which is the physical manifestation of AI now. It's not just
Okay.
about large language models. It's like what's really happening. So
Sure. So with
I got to
AI
begin with
was that thing? AI or in autonomy or like what were the top?
the word AI was everywhere. I mean, it's on too many things nowadays,
Yeah.
but in mobility, it's really playing a role. Now, normally this time of year we'd be headed off to the North American International Auto Show, the Detroit Auto Show, in times gone by. But as a kind of a nod that CES has become the auto show to a certain
Mm.
extent for a lot of us, particularly just when it's specifically about mobility. It's a different time, and I'm a little bit surprised. The big manufacturers, the domestic manufacturers, were not there. There wasn't a General Motors display or
Mm.
Ford, Toyota for that matter, Volkswagen. BMW always has a property outside, and they've held on to that in the outer parking lot forever. The big ones on the inside, Hyundai had the biggest piece of property, although it wasn't occupied by vehicles. It was about robotics,
Okay.
and there were a couple cars on display, but they were being used to be moved around by robots, and
Yeah.
also not only the internal robots. The ones from the car industry that are interesting are the wearable or the haptic robots that are helping your arms move and your legs move,
Wow.
whether it's lifting or moving around a factory, or even recovery from an injury, or more importantly, preventing injuries from happening. Those were in a lot of different displays, and certainly on display with in the
Well,
Hyundai booth, showing people that work with their arms above their heads on vehicles, whether it's changing tires and things like that. Again, you get external help.
I was gonna say Hyundai owns Boston Dynamics, right? And I did see that
Exactly.
video clip of that crazy robot doing the backflip. I mean, is Hyundai thinking that they're gonna actually robot the lines to make cars?
Exactly. So,
Wow.
humanistic robots, the human form is used a lot for recognition, which makes it a little bit creepy sometimes, but also because our workspaces are built for that. But the effective robots we certainly see on assembly lines, the welding robots, and are stationary, and the cars come to them, and even those that put in windshield glass or seats in the back. So in some ways, creating it's much more complicated to make the human form robot that's actually has to move around. But they're doing it, and they showed Atlas. There's the four-legged version also, and as these robots are proving helpful in terms of going into dangerous places and places that people really shouldn't, and in that regard, they're transporting sensors in and out, whether it's visual or smell or gases, that type of thing. So years away, if anybody's waiting for that. Maid or somebody to come around the house and do things. Any of the demonstrations were interesting, but they were, it's more carnival, more show than go. Let's talk about autonomous cars for just a minute.
Yeah, please.
Waymo's there. They have their sixth generation, and it's what's the sensor form set up, and they said it was 16 cameras, 5 lidar, six radar. They even have the external audio receiver, 29 sensors on that. But
Mm.
now they're showing it on the next generation vehicles. Part of Waymo's success, undeniably, is it's a luxury car. It's on the Jaguar, but now next generation for affordability, it's on the
Right.
Hyundai, but it's also on a Zeekr minivan, which is a
Yeah.
very appropriate size and shape for the autonomous car, certainly seems to me. So
Mm.
that'll be interesting as that comes out. Also, Lucid showed a possible autonomous car coming out later this year. They partnered with Neuro and with NVIDIA, and then also Uber, and it's a Gravity, an autonomous version of that. And then there was one called Tensor. The interesting thing about that, it's going to be sold so it can be a personal car that could be a robo car. And they're calling it a robo car, not a robo taxi, although it lights up with the Lyft logos on the front saying that, you can use it in a small fleet. It can be part of, or you could use it personally. You think,
Yeah.
well, are we buying those yet? And, Elon would tell you that you are. If anybody
Ah,
that owns a Tesla has a robo car already, but it just hasn't been certified. Zoox along those lines was there, and they don't have that. They were in operation in Las Vegas. We get a little bit spoiled out here in Northern California, Southern California, seeing the Waymos and the Zoox on the road. They were giving rides in Vegas. So it was over an hour wait for a Zoox vehicle. And even in Vegas, they weren't doing the full mapping. They had predetermined routes that they were utilizing.
okay. Yeah.
I jumped ahead to there's a number of other cars that are perhaps, active showed vehicles, but others are around, but those were the big ones. There's this one that was shown, and it's called, oh my gosh, I'll get it wrong, Plight, and it's Plyt, and it's actually a pod vehicle, and it's got four pods that look like business class seats,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's for shared mobility. But it's interesting in the concept that we don't really want to share things. However, we get privacy, almost like
I
on a
see.
business class. Going back to the cars, I meant to say that were there. Sony was there, Sona Honda. They show the Honda word that we all know that's going to cause a little bit of a problem with the Honda dealers. The fact that this
Y
Fila,
Fila. Yeah.
Afeela,
Mhm.
is it's got the Honda name on it. It's really a Sony product. It seems like it's a beautiful car. My only problem is the price. This is close to $100,000.
Yikes. Yikes.
It's a very expensive game,
Yeah.
as Sony would describe it. The Chinese were there, Geely,
Okay.
and Great Wall. Geely is not only Geely, but it's also the Zeekr and Linko.
Mhm.
So again, beautiful vehicles on display that we don't have for sale here in the United States. The other thing that's there in great volume are all this a number of suppliers. So,
Mhm.
certainly I mentioned Valeo was outside. Gentex was inside, and they had a great display. And it's a reminder how complicated it is to get something onto make it automotive grade and have it built into the automotive of today. They were showing things that I had seen over the years, a visor that I saw, a dimming visor, and they're really going after glare and things. But again, it seems like it plods relative to the speed of CES in terms of development. But again, anything going into an automobile or in your fleet need to be tested and anyway, well proven. And then again, that the initials that so many of them had were SDV, which is a software defined
Mhm.
vehicle.
Yeah.
And you can't say that without thinking of Bosch, who was showing a lot of things. And they, along with NVIDIA, both the big news was that they made their autonomous vehicle stack open source.
Yeah.
So a really big deal there that's going to make it easier. Snapdragon also, who works with Qualcomm. And then one other thing I have to mention on the fleet side with Bosch is the work that they're doing with Kodiak for the first driverless trucks. So
Okay.
again, Kodiak is putting it together using Bosch parts or using, Peterbilt trucks, but they're putting the package together for the driverless vehicle. And I know we're getting out of time, but my favorite company there I have to mention, Chris, we
Yeah.
can't not talk about is Donut. Well, they showed a solid state battery, and many of us are skeptical. Everybody's
Mm.
questioning it because if it's real, it's holy grail. I mean,
Yep.
this is a battery that has energy density. It'll recharge 100,000 times cycles.
Mhm.
It doesn't catch on fire. It doesn't lose power in heat and cold. It's just, is it real? Because, but they're saying it's on their motorcycle, and they're saying
Yep.
it's the only stainless steel battery. I'm sorry, solid state stainless steel
Yeah.
battery that's available. So that's huge news in a booth from a development company that will really shake up this industry, from an alternative fuel standpoint. And one other thing they had for the large scale truckers, fleet companies, they had a boost. They incorporated their motor on the trailer, so they had electric motors in the trailer that would, take away or significantly add to mileage, performance, handling, going up and over the Sierras, whatever it is to that. So
Wow.
take a
That's
deep breath.
cool.
I covered a lot there. Sorry.
Yeah, you really did. I mean, but that is a really cool way to cap it. Well, certainly a lot of holy grails at CES every year, and maybe one comes to fruition, but we can all
Yeah.
dream. Hopefully I'll see you next year at CES and we can walk the
Yeah.
full floor together. But Charlie, listen, thank you for joining us and sharing your
Absolutely.
experience at CES 2026.
My pleasure. Good to see you, Chris.